This presentation was given to the MassLandlords group on May 6th, 2020. I'm Charles Hatzel, the co-founder and CEO of ePropertyCare. This talks about how smart home technology applies for rental properties. And as a quick background, I spent 15 years in the semiconductor world. So teams that I've led have literally built the chips that go into a lot of these smart home tech devices. And I've also been a multi-state landlord for about 15 years. So that's kind of the intersection of my background and experience. So we're going to go through what does smart home mean for landlords and four key benefits. I'm going to talk about some key landlord use cases around water protection, smart locks, smart temperature, and video. I'm going to go through three case studies, and I'm going to talk about steps to get started. So first, for most landlords, I would wager that this has happened to you in the past year. A building door being propped open by a tenant, a water heater leak, a call in the middle of the night from a locked out tenant, a running toilet not reported until you got a huge water bill, or frozen pipes from a tenant turning off the heat to save money and freezing your pipes. So the key question that smart home tech can address is how much time, money, and stress could you have saved if you knew about a problem quickly and were able to take remote action? So smart home, the way I define it, is using internet-connected sensors and devices to control, monitor, or protect a property. And for landlords, while primary residences typically have a Wi-Fi connection, this typically is not in place for rental properties. So our focus today is how do you implement a smart home in properties that don't have a Wi-Fi connection. So the first big benefit of smart home tech is avoiding disaster and lowering insurance premiums. So through technology, you can now be informed of open doors, extreme temps, water leaks, and more before you have a disaster. You can also act quickly when something does happen. So if a leak is detected, you could automatically close the water valve. If you get a temperature alert, you can send in an HVAC person before it becomes a tenant emergency. And through all this technology, you can also lower insurance premiums because many insurance carriers are now offering credits if smart home tech is installed, especially around water protection. The second benefit is reducing operating costs, and I define costs as both time and money. So first, you can reduce utility expenses. If you pay for common area heat or water or unit heat, you can now monitor water consumption, monitor electricity usage, and put some technology in place to limit unnecessary usage of both. You can also reduce strain on heating systems or AC systems, so your tenant can't run the heat at 80 and keep all the windows open because they're not paying for it. You could also save money when the property is vacant. So now instead of having to drive out to the building to adjust the thermostat, you can now get on your phone and change it to make sure it's set to the right temperature. Another big benefit of smart home tech is eliminating rekeying expenses. So instead of having thousands of keys that you're tracking and managing and losing, you can now not have to pay locksmiths to rekey locks or managing different cores for master key systems. And finally, you can streamline access to the property. And this is particularly useful because you could give secure access for trades, cleaners, and guests, but you also don't have to be held to tenant scheduling anymore. So that tenant that gives you a 30-minute window for the week that they're home, you can now work collaboratively with them to grant controlled access, get jobs taken care of without requiring someone home if they approve of it. The third benefit is differentiating a property and increasing rent. So smart home tech's in demand for millennial tenants, and people are willing to pay more. And in an old housing market like Boston, with some of the oldest housing stock in the country, if you have an apartment that has smart home tech, is keyless, allows the thermostat to be controlled via phone, versus an old building that has 2 keys for different doors, that's going to be the first is going to be a lot more attractive. So this makes a property a lot more sticky, which leads to higher renewals. You can also charge higher rent. So the Blackstone Group is the private equity guys that purchased tens of thousands of single-family properties during the downturn of 2008. They outfitted them with smart home tech and turned them into rental properties. So they actually charge tenants if they want to have access to the app to control their smart home. So this is actually the similar platform to what we use at ePropertyCare. But they've figured out a way to not only reduce costs and avert disaster, but to increase their top-line revenue by having smart home tech installed. That leads to a very positive net operating income. And finally, the fourth benefit is avoiding unnecessary exposure. In the COVID-19 age, you you want to avoid in-person contact whenever possible. So this is safer for you, for your tenants, and for your trades, because now you could grant access to a plumber to get in the property when no one's there. So the tenant's not getting exposed, the plumber's not getting exposed, just a lot of big net benefits from it. So many of these traditional landlord functions can now be done remotely. So let's go through a couple of key use cases. So the first, I think, important use case is water protection. So today, you're kind of going from hoping that a tenant reports a water leak to a system telling you that you have a water leak in real time. And this is an actual alert that I received from my rental property in Somerville over Thanksgiving. I got an alert that there was a high flow condition. I called up the tenant. Turns out there was a burst water valve on the exterior of my building pouring water out into the driveway. This was at 7 o'clock at night and would not have been caught until the following morning. And that would have been about $400 in wasted water. But through the system, we were able to know about it immediately and take quick action. So here are the key use cases. So first, detecting hard leaks via water sensors. So you could place wireless water sensors near water heaters, washing machines, sump pumps, or other areas in the property that you're concerned about. You could automatically shut off water if the leak is detected. So this requires a shutoff valve installed on the water main. And you could detect running toilets before you get that $1,000 water bill. Some of these new water flow meters detect abnormal water usage, both flow rate and duration, and can allow you to set alerts and take action. So here are some options for water sensors. The first gen sensors were screamers. So these just made a loud noise if they detect water. That's great if you're a homeowner, but if you're a landlord, you got to rely on someone being home and reporting it. So if no one's there to hear it, is it effective? The second gen sensors are connected. So these connect to a system that sends alerts to your phone, email, or other mediums. So these are ideal for rentals because now you could have the system tell you when there's a water leak and not rely upon the tenant. So the second area is water shutoff valves. So on the shutoff only side, WaterCop was one of the first to set up electronic shutoff valves. Alarm.com now has a new valve that solves some of the problems of WaterCop. These can be paired with water sensors to trigger closing the valve when a water sensor is activated. On the flow meter side, these are fairly new. So Flow, Alarm.com, and Fin are three models of shutoff valves with integrated flow meters that could sense those leaks, those running toilets, or those burst pipes, in addition to pairing with water sensors that you might have mounted near hot water tanks or sump pumps. So let's move to smart locks. With smart home tech, you go from this on the left, a closet full of keys or keychains full of keys, to a full keyless solution for your tenant and an app access or master key for the landlord. So much easier to manage and to control access. So let's talk about some use cases. So first, the first gen smart locks had major limitations. So that Schlage lock there on the right, I've replaced hundreds of those because they require manual reprogramming. So if a tenant moves out, you literally have to go to the lock, punch in a complex programming sequence to erase the code and to add a new code. So most people just choose not to change the codes and recycle them, which is very unsecure. The second problem is battery status. So you got to kind of rely on the lock to alert a tenant that the batteries are running low. That's not really a very good strategy. So most likely you're going to get a call from the tenant when the battery died and they're locked out. So the second generation locks are connected and solve a lot of these first gen limitations. So now you can add and delete codes remotely through a phone or computer. You can set up auto lock or alerts if a door is left unlocked. You can even set up an alert if a code is used. So if you want to know if the electrician got in to do the work, you could create a code for them that tells you. And finally, you can have awareness of battery status, so you could plan the changing of the batteries before it becomes a critical issue. So these are some smart lock options from August, Yale, Schlage, Kwikset. I tend to like the Kwikset locks because I could sell a smart deadbolt for $100, and I could use the Kwikset smart key functionality to basically create a hard master key for all my locks, and then go completely keyless with the tenants. So give them app or a code access or both to enter the units. So some of the key considerations: do you go keyless or do you still rely on keys? part of the value of the second gen smart locks is you no longer need to have a key for a tenant. Second thing is having a strategy for changing batteries. So if you have a bunch of smart locks deployed, you need to have a method for making sure that the locks are batteries are up to date, so you don't have any issues, or you're not running back and forth between properties to change them. And the final consideration is tenant privacy. So we recommend disclosing in leases that you have smart home, smart locks, and that the locks keep kind of track of accesses. So we have lawyer partners that we work with that could help you with this if needed. So let's move on to thermostats. Many landlords have that old Honeywell round thermostat that is analog and no schedules. So you're going from that to a thermostat that's controlled with a phone. So first key use case, remotely controlling with a phone. So this is for you or your tenants. And as I said earlier, if the property is vacant, you can now adjust the thermostat so you're not pumping the heat or pumping the AC when it's not needed. You can also receive temperature alerts. So this is important because if the temperature gets too low or too high, you get kind of advanced warning that something's wrong. So you can kind of check out, is there an HVAC issue? Is there an open door? It lets you have advanced warning before you have that disaster. And you can also place them in areas where you're concerned about freezing, like plumbing being near an exterior wall. So you can get an alert to say, hey, it's 30 degrees here, something's wrong. Check me out to make sure you don't have that burst pipe. And another kind of unique use case for smart thermostats is limiting the temp range. So you can now set partial locks on your thermostats to prevent a tenant from going too low or too high in temperature. So this is useful also for common area thermostats where the tenant could just pop it up to 80 to heat up the whole building. You can now limit the range and save the accordingly on utilities. So here are some options: Nest, Ecobee, Honeywell, and Building 36. So some considerations: set the min and max temps. Do you want to do that? And do you want to give tenants app access as an amenity? Smart thermostats are shown to reduce utilities by 15%. So that is a key selling feature of putting these in place. And one thing I want to note, most of these smart thermostats require a common wire on the HVAC system. So the Building 36 models do not. So they're one of the only connected smart thermostats that will work on 2 wires. So that's a huge advantage for legacy boiler systems or baseboard heat. So let's talk about video. So now you're going from a DVR in a network closet in the basement of a building to now a cloud-based platform that you could remotely view and control. So video key use cases are detecting loitering and unauthorized access. So the new cameras are smart now. So first-gen cameras, if a leaf blew by, it would trigger a motion event and send you an alert. So that created too many alerts and people just started ignoring them. These new cameras, from Alarm.com and others, have analytics built into them. So they could detect a person and say, if a person comes into this area or crosses this tripwire, send an alert and notify me. You could also tie that to automations, such as turning on the lights in an alleyway or rear of a building if an intruder is detected. A lot of these newer systems now allow remote access for recording events. So now you could have a cloud-connected DVR on site and access that through the app or through the cloud interface. So this allows you to connect this to cloud recordings as well as to door sensors and locks on your doors. So if a lock is opened, you could record an event and store a clip in the cloud so you know that have a record of who enters a building. And the remote viewing footage, we just discussed that. So here are some options. Nest, Arlo, Alarm.com, and Ring all have good indoor and outdoor camera options. Most of these cameras will require a power source, either a plug or a power over Ethernet cable. Arlo does have some battery-powered cameras, but they require recharging, so they're not really well suited, I think, for rental property use cases because you'll have to drive out there and recharge the camera. The other consideration is tenant privacy. So cameras obviously are not really intended for indoor, inside a unit, but for common areas, for exterior, I think it's fair game. Again, it's things that you should disclose in a lease. So let's talk about a few case studies. So the first case study is around the insurance savings. So we have a 10-building landlord in East Boston that was burned many times by running toilets, and he was exploring a solution to this problem. We worked with one of our partner insurance companies to give him substantial credits to get our water protection solution installed. So he decided to roll it out to 10 buildings. He's going to save $7,500 annually across his 10 properties. This not only more than pays for the cost of the solution, it basically allowed him to roll out smart locks for free. So this is an example of a landlord, through insurance savings, getting a full system deployed and enjoying recurring benefits of it and protecting his building better. So it's a pretty good case study of what's possible. The second one is a water heater failure. This is for a landlord that has a water heater on the 5th floor of a building in Brookline. This would never have been detected until there was water dripping from the ceiling below, because it's in a space that no one would ever be in. So we installed the water sensor, and you can see a little rope there around the red area that detected an early signs of water heater failure. He was able to get a few bids and schedule a replacement at a convenient time for the tenants. So no emergency call and no emergency plumber visit. That allowed him to save a lot of money, and he didn't have 5 floors flood in an expensive building. The third case study is from a MassLandlords member who had a tenant that was avoiding him. So tenant was behind on rent and was, quote, never home, refused to engage the landlord in a discussion. So we installed some smart locks on the building, and the landlord created a notification to get a text alert when his code was used. So he was able to know when the tenant was home, knock on the door, have the conversation, and got back his owed rent, which was a very good outcome. So let's talk about some steps to get started. So the most important part of this, as we talked about early in the presentation, is internet access. So one option is to get cable or DSL from the likes of Comcast, RCN, or other cable providers. That tends to be pretty expensive, and we'll kind of go through that a little bit later. In the Boston area, there's a new company called Starry that has a really cool wireless internet system for larger buildings, where they will include common area Wi-Fi for free if you set up Starry and offer it as an amenity to your tenants. So that's a pretty good deal if you have a large building. And we do a lot of work with Starry in terms of referrals. The second system is Cellular. So for Cellular, you can use a mobile hotspot, an alarm system, or our ePropertyCare system. So instead of relying on a router and then a separate connection to the internet, you have a hub that directly connects to the cellular network to give you that persistent internet connection. So let's talk about some of the trade-offs. So if you provide owner-supplied Wi-Fi, that's really the only option for streaming recording. You can offer it as a perk and bundle it into rent, but on the con side, business plans from Comcast and others are expensive. They typically double the price if it's for a building that's not your primary residence. Do you also want to be the IT support for your tenants? So if the internet stops working, do you want to get that phone call? Now, some landlords will piggyback off of tenant's Wi-Fi. So they have a relationship with the tenant and it's, quote, free. But what happens if the tenant moves out or if the relationship showers? Then you kind of lose all the benefits of this smart home tech. And the final option is cellular. And cellular is now much lower cost than Wi-Fi. So we have plans that start at $5 a month for a dedicated, persistent internet connection. And you're also not dependent on the hardware in the tenant unit. So that's kind of good. You could put a hub in the building common area or in the basement that now controls all the sensors and locks in the building. It does require a separate modem, and it is lower bandwidth, so it's not really suited for streaming recording. There are options now for cloud recording of clips over cellular, but streaming is still a little too much bandwidth for a typical cellular connection. So the second step is choosing your local wireless strategy. So within your building, how do the devices connect to each other? So Wi-Fi is a pretty common one today because it's high bandwidth and you already have the modem in place. The problem is Wi-Fi is very power hungry. So you don't see too many Wi-Fi sensors that are battery powered because you'll be changing the batteries quite often. You also need to have a direct connection from the router to the sensor. So if you have your router upstairs and a sensor down in the basement, most likely you're not going to have a great connection there or might not even see each other at all. So Zigbee is one of the protocols that was designed for home automation that solves this. So Zigbee is designed for low power and it's a mesh network. So it communicates with neighboring nodes and will pass data along through powered nodes. So this allows that sensor in the basement to pass data to the next powered sensor nearby, and then that connects directly to the router. So that allows you to have a much stronger network throughout a home where you have walls and ceilings and other impediments. The problem with Zigbee is it's at the same frequency range as Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. So if you have tenants streaming video across 4 iPads, you might have issues with your smart home. And you also need to go all in on the same protocol. So it's hard to mix like Zigbee and other protocols. You need to kind of choose one and stick with it. Z-Wave is the final one. Z-Wave, like Zigbee, is low power and mesh, but it also is 900 megahertz. So it's lower frequency, which gives it greater range in a home. The problem is with Z-Wave is you need to go all in on the protocol as well. I tend to recommend Z-Wave, the ecosystem, because it was designed for home automation and it's standards based. So the nice thing is if you get Z-Wave hardware, you could use that with many different hubs. You're not locked into a proprietary system. I think that's important part of smart home consideration. The final step is choosing your install strategy. So DIY, if you're relatively hands-on and techie, do-it-yourself is a good option because it's low cost. You're not paying someone to do it, and usually there's not a monthly associated with it. Now we just saw recently that Wink is requiring people to pay a subscription for their smart home service. So there's a trend for a lot of these quote free services that are moving towards paid services. The con is time. So you're giving up time to do this. You need to have some level of tech expertise and you need to have some level of hardware install expertise. So if you're not comfortable with that, alarm and cable companies are another option. They have pro install options. They have a large support infrastructure, but they're expensive. The monthly alarm bill is $30 to $50, and a lot of them require long-term contracts. Also, their platform is not targeted towards landlords. It's targeted more for homeowners. So it doesn't have some of the features that allow you as a landlord to create conditional levels of access for tenants and other things through the system. The final option is ePropertyCare. So this is what our company specializes in, smart home tech for landlords. We have pro, do-it-yourself, or do-it-together options in this age of social distancing. So we could literally help you set up a system over the phone that we ship to you prepared. We're also scalable. So we have one app to allow you to control all your buildings from a single login. And you could add different elements based on different needs in different buildings. And like I said, we're very focused on the landlord use cases of locks, access control, and temperature monitoring. They can also do things with video, with building access, with lighting, and more. The con is there is a monthly for our service, but we're much less than the alarm companies. Again, we start around $5 a month. And we don't have a huge support infrastructure, but we're better than DIY. We currently have customers in 22 states, so we're able to kind of scale this nationally pretty easily, especially for DIY and DIT installations. So choose what's best for your situation, and we're happy to give free advice for MassLandlords members. So this is kind of the one-slide summary about ePropertyCare. So like I said, our platform allows you to monitor and control your entire portfolio through one app over cellular. And this picture on the right is actually a real-life shot of my rental property in Somerville. Through this, I'm able to control my smart locks, my thermostats, detect water consumption, and detect leaks and shut off my water valve. So these are kind of the trifecta of very important use cases for landlords. We can also support cases for electrified door control, door sensors, lights, video intercom, motion sensors, and more. This is part of one of the suites of services that we offer for smart home, security and access control, and concierge maintenance and repair. We also have a third-party monitoring option. So for a lot of those insurance credits, you need to have a third party monitoring the alerts. So we could provide that as part of our solution. So we're in 22 states. We could support all 50. And basic systems are actually very affordable. You're looking at less than $300 installed for a basic system, and about $5 a month, ranging up to $15, $20, depending upon what you're doing. So we offer professional, do-it-yourself, and do-it-together installation options, and you can schedule a free consultation at ePropertyCare.com. So that was the main presentation. I won't go through the demo right now, but if you have any questions or any feedback on this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks for watching.